James had always led a modest life as a mechanic on a remote space station, located far beyond the fringes of human civilization. He relished the solitude and the certainty that came with working on machines. For him, they were straightforward. Either they functioned or they didn't, and there was always a method to fix them. People, however, were a different story. They were unpredictable, emotional, and often chaotic. This is why James preferred the company of engines and circuits, finding peace in the hum of machinery, which was his only companion. That tranquility was abruptly disrupted one fateful day when an unexpected message arrived. James was knee-deep in repairs on a malfunctioning engine when his communication unit crackled to life, projecting a holographic image before him. It displayed a symbol he didn't recognize, a swirling emblem that shimmered faintly in the dim light of the station. James Vance of Earth, a deep, authoritative voice resonated from the transmission. You have been named the heir to the throne of the Galactic Kingdom of Zera by the late King Trog. You are hereby summoned to the royal capital of Zera Prime to claim your inheritance. James blinked in confusion, wiping grease from his hands. Inheritance? Galactic Kingdom? This had to be a mistake. He had no connections to alien royalty. He was merely a mechanic. He attempted to dismiss the message, thinking it might be a scam, but moments later, another transmission came through, this one marked with an official insignia. The voice was more insistent. The message is intended for you, James Vance. Prepare for immediate transport. Before he could respond or even fully grasp what was happening, a beam of light enveloped him. His skin tingled as the world around him dissolved into shimmering particles. In an instant, the familiar surroundings of his quiet workshop vanished, replaced by the grandeur of a palace. The air here was thick with sweet, unfamiliar scents, and the walls shimmered with iridescent hues, while towering figures clad in ornate armor stood before him. "Welcome to Zera Prime, human," one of the figures said, his voice low and commanding. James was guided through an expansive corridor adorned with intricate carvings, each more alien and opulent than anything he had ever witnessed. As they walked, he felt like an insignificant speck in a world far too vast for him. The armored guards ushered him into a grand chamber where 4 figures awaited. They were the royal daughters of King Trog, the princesses of the Zyran Empire. Their eyes glowed softly in the dim light, and their skin shimmered with a radiant glow. Tall, ethereal, and coldly beautiful, they burst into laughter upon seeing James. "This is the human our father chose," the tallest princess said, her voice dripping with amusement. A mere mechanic, the others joined in her laughter, and James felt a surge of anger rise within him. He was uncertain of his purpose here, but it was evident that these princesses saw him as nothing more than a joke. "I don't know why I'm here," James said, his voice steady despite the mounting tension. "But I don't find this amusing." The tallest princess, whose eyes glowed a deep amethyst, raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it's not funny at all. It's tragic. Our father, in his infinite wisdom, has left us in your care." James blinked, struggling to comprehend her words. "Care? What do you mean?" Another princess, her hair shimmering like silver, stepped forward. The will was clear. "You are our new guardian. You now bear the responsibility for the 4 of us." James stared at them, disbelief washing over him. A mechanic in charge of 4 alien princesses? How could that even be? Yet, the more he studied their cold, calculating gazes, the more he realized that his life had just become far more complicated than he ever imagined. Barely had he processed his new role before the princesses began to test him. They showed little interest in accepting him as their guardian, let alone treating him with respect. The eldest princess, Zalara, seemed to take particular delight in belittling him. With sharp, angular features and piercing violet eyes, she radiated authority and wasted no time in asserting her dominance. "You may have the title of guardian," Zalara said, her voice as frigid as ice, "but you are still human, a species far beneath us. Don't expect us to follow your orders." James stood his ground, refusing to be intimidated. "I didn't ask for this responsibility, but I won't allow you to walk all over me." Zalara's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, the second eldest princess, Elara, intervened. Her silver hair flowed like liquid light, and her starry eyes sparkled. Enough, Zalara. We may not like it, but the will is binding. Father's choice cannot be undone. The youngest princess, Lara, watched the exchange with quiet amusement. Her emerald eyes glimmered with mischief. Perhaps father wanted to give us a challenge, she said with a smirk. A human mechanic is our guardian. How entertaining. James felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. He was no royal, nor did he possess any experience in navigating the complexities of alien politics or royal duties. But one thing was clear. These princesses would not make his new role any easier. As the days passed, James found himself drawn into a world he barely understood. The Zyran court was a labyrinth of alliances, rivalries, and ancient traditions. The princesses seemed to take pleasure in placing him in challenging situations, testing his patience and resilience. Yet, despite their hostility, he began to notice cracks in their icy facades. Beneath the arrogance and disdain, he sensed a profound loss, a deep sorrow for their father, the king, who had left them so abruptly. James couldn't fathom why the late king had chosen him as their guardian, but he knew he wouldn't let them dismiss him so easily. He was determined to assert his presence, whether they liked it or not. The days that followed were filled with tension. The princesses relentlessly challenged James at every turn, often finding ways to complicate his life. Zalara, in particular, seemed intent on proving his unworthiness for the role of guardian. But James, nothing if not persistent, drew on his experience as a mechanic, which had taught him patience and problem-solving skills. He approached his new duties with the same determination. He didn't need their approval all at once. He simply had to keep doing his job. Before long, the opportunity to prove himself presented itself. One evening, a formal gathering was held at the palace where members of the Zyran court would pay their respects to the princesses and discuss matters of state. James felt out of place among the splendor and stood at the edge of the gathering, observing the proceedings. The princesses, clad in their finest robes, mingled with the courtiers, their regal presence undeniable. James had no intention of intervening until an argument erupted. A representative from a neighboring system had insulted Zalara, questioning her ability to rule in her father's absence. The insult was subtle, veiled in diplomatic language, but it was enough to plunge the room into awkward silence. Zalara's expression hardened, but before she could respond, James stepped forward. "You will apologize," he said, his voice firm, surprising everyone in the room, including himself. The representative, a tall reptilian figure, turned to face James with a sneer. "And who are you to demand such a thing, humans?" "I am the guardian of the princesses," James replied steadily, "and I won't allow anyone to speak to them like that." The room held its breath as the representative sized him up, clearly weighing the risk of challenging someone connected to the royal family. After a long pause, he inclined his head slightly. "My apologies, Princess Zalara," he said, his voice laced with insincerity. "I meant no offense." Zalara, her expression controlled but furious, gave a curt nod. However, James could see the faintest hint of relief in her eyes. The moment passed, and the gathering resumed, but from that point forward, the dynamic between James and the princesses began to change. Later that evening, after the gathering had concluded and the courtiers had departed, Zalara approached James in the palace gardens. The cool night air enveloped them as they stood in silence for a moment before she spoke. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her tone softer than usual. James shrugged. "I wasn't going to stand by and let someone insult you." Zalara regarded him, her violet eyes inscrutable in the moonlight. "You're a curious human, James Vance. Most would have remained silent." "Maybe," he replied, "but I'm not like most humans." For the first time, Zalara didn't have a sharp retort. Instead, she nodded once and walked away, leaving James alone in the garden. He watched her depart, feeling a small sense of victory. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As weeks turned into months, James gradually adapted to his new life as the guardian of the royal princesses. Each day presented fresh challenges, from navigating the intricacies of the Zyran court to learning the customs and traditions of the empire. Yet, perhaps the greatest challenge was earning the trust of the princesses themselves. Alara, the second eldest, was the first to show signs of thawing. With her silver hair and star-like eyes, she possessed an almost otherworldly quality, but beneath that exterior was a mind as sharp as a blade. She had been overseeing a diplomatic mission with a neighboring planet when a misunderstanding threatened to escalate into an intergalactic incident. Sensing the gravity of the situation, James offered to assist. At first, Alara was skeptical. What could a human possibly know about diplomacy? She questioned, her tone icy. Maybe not much, he admitted, but I'm good at fixing things when they break. Perhaps that applies here as well. Reluctantly, Alara allowed him to accompany her to the meeting. As tensions rose and negotiations faltered, James noticed something the others had overlooked: a simple miscommunication caused by a language barrier. He quietly pointed it out to Alara, who used the information to defuse the situation. The crisis was averted, and for the first time, Alara regarded James with genuine respect. "You're not as useless as I thought," she remarked, her tone lacking its usual edge. James couldn't help but grin. "Thanks, I think." From that moment on, Alara began to involve him more in her diplomatic efforts. Though she never openly acknowledged it, James sensed he had earned a small measure of her trust. While Alara remained distant and often aloof, she no longer went out of her way to belittle him. The youngest princess, Lara, was a different story altogether. Mischievous and playful, she delighted in testing James's patience at every opportunity. Whether through elaborate pranks or cryptic riddles, she seemed determined to keep him on his toes. Yet, with his mechanic's resilience, James never allowed her the satisfaction of seeing him frustrated. In fact, over time, he found himself enjoying their playful exchanges. Lara's antics, while often annoying, revealed a side of her that was both spirited and endearing. As James settled deeper into his role as the guardian of the Zyran princesses, he began to realize that the challenges of royal life extended far beyond diplomatic snafus and testy courtiers. Each day felt like a new adventure, laden with expectations, unknown customs, and the complexities of navigating the intricate hierarchy of the Zyran court. One afternoon, he found himself in the sprawling gardens of Zero Prime, the vibrant blooms and alien flora surrounding him in an otherworldly kaleidoscope of colors. The air was fragrant, thick with the scent of blossoms he couldn't name. James had been summoned to assist the princesses with their studies, an endeavor that had turned into a chaotic gathering more often than not. Lara was perched on a marble bench, her emerald eyes sparkling with mischief as she flipped through an ornate tome, its pages inscribed with indecipherable symbols. Zalara stood nearby, arms crossed, looking disdainfully at the book. Alara was pacing, her silver hair glinting in the sunlight, while Zalara cast pointed glances at her younger sister. "Can't we do something more exciting than reading this?" Lara whined, tossing the book aside. "I'd rather go exploring in the Forbidden Forest." "Exploring is not in the curriculum," Zalara replied sharply. "You need to learn about the history of our empire." "But history is boring." Lara pouted, flipping her hair back dramatically. James watched the exchange, trying to suppress a smile. He was still astonished by how quickly he'd become accustomed to the princess's banter. "Maybe a compromise is in order," he suggested, stepping forward. "How about we study history in the Forbidden Forest? It could provide some real-world context." Zalara shot him a skeptical look. "And what makes you think you can lead us on such an expedition? Humans?" James squared his shoulders, determined not to be cowed. "Because I've explored my fair share of alien terrains, and I know how to keep you all safe. Besides, you might find that history comes alive when you experience it firsthand." A moment of silence hung in the air as the princesses exchanged glances. Finally, Alara nodded slowly. "It's a novel idea. If we're going to study, we might as well do it somewhere interesting." Lara clapped her hands together, a wide grin spreading across her face. "Yes, let's go." Zalara hesitated, but seemed to realize that she was outnumbered. With a reluctant sigh, she relented. "Fine, but you'll all stay close." And James, don't let them wander off. The group set off toward the Forbidden Forest, which lay on the outskirts of the palace grounds. Rumored to be enchanted, the forest was filled with towering trees that twisted into impossible shapes, their bark shimmering with hues of blue and gold. The air grew cooler as they entered, a contrast to the warmth of the sun outside. James led the way, feeling the excitement and curiosity radiating from the princesses. This forest is said to be home to the Celestials, he explained, recalling what he'd learned from the Zyran historians. They are ancient beings that are said to guard the secrets of our universe. If we're lucky, we might even catch a glimpse of one. The princesses walked closely behind him, their expressions a mix of awe and skepticism. Lara darted ahead, her laughter ringing through the trees, while Zalara maintained a protective stance, ever watchful. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they reached a clearing where the trees opened up to reveal a shimmering lake. The surface glimmered like glass, reflecting the sky above. "This is beautiful," Lara exclaimed, her eyes wide as she leaned over the edge to peer into the water. "Don't get too close," Zalara warned, her voice laced with concern. "We don't know what might be in there." James approached the water's edge, intrigued by the strange light dancing beneath the surface. "It's said that the Celestials can manifest in the lake," he explained. "If we're quiet, we might be able to communicate with them." The princesses gathered around him, their previous bickering forgotten as they gazed at the shimmering lake with a mix of hope and trepidation. James closed his eyes and focused, channeling the calm he'd learned over the years as a mechanic. "Celestials," he called softly, "we seek your wisdom." For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves. Then, ripples spread across the surface of the lake, and a faint, glowing figure began to emerge. The princesses gasped, taking a step back. James remained rooted in place, his heart racing with wonder and disbelief. The figure materialized into a radiant entity, its form shifting like smoke and light, a dazzling blend of colors swirling together. "Who dares to summon the Celestials?" A voice echoed from the figure, resonating within the very air around them. James took a deep breath, summoning his courage. "We are the guardians of the Zyran Empire, seeking knowledge and guidance. We wish to understand our place in the universe." The Celestial regarded him, its glowing eyes piercing into his soul. "You tread a path fraught with challenges, young human. The burden you carry is heavy. But remember, it is not only knowledge you seek. It is unity." "Unity?" James echoed, glancing at the princesses, who stood in a mix of awe and confusion. "Only through understanding and cooperation can you thrive. The destinies of your worlds are intertwined, but only if you embrace the strength within you." As the entity spoke, the colors in the lake began to shift, creating images of vibrant worlds, intertwined fates, and ancient battles fought for peace. James felt a wave of realization wash over him. His role as their guardian was not just about protecting them. It was about forging connections, understanding their struggles, and uniting their destinies. "But how can we achieve this unity?" Zalara asked, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty beneath it. "By embracing your differences," the Celestial replied. "The strength of a kingdom lies in its diversity. Trust one another and grow together, for harmony is born from acceptance." Before they could respond, the figure began to fade, dissolving back into the shimmering waters. James felt a pang of disappointment, but the message lingered in the air, a challenge and a promise intertwined. Once the lake was still again, Lara broke the silence. "That was amazing. Do you think it was real?" James turned to the princesses, their expressions ranging from disbelief to contemplation. "I believe it was," he replied, "and I think we need to take its message seriously. It's not just about ruling a kingdom. It's about learning to work together." Zalara nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding crossing her features. "Perhaps there's more to this than we initially thought." Alara looked at James with newfound respect. "You were right to bring us here. Maybe you are more suited for this role than we gave you credit for." Feeling a surge of hope, James smiled. It's not just me. It's all of us. We have to embrace our roles and responsibilities together. With the princesses gathered around him, a sense of unity began to blossom. They were not just a mechanic and royal daughters. They were a team, bound together by purpose and an unexpected bond forged in the heart of an enchanted forest. As they made their way back to the palace, laughter filled the air. The challenges that lay ahead still loomed large, but for the first time, James felt that perhaps they could navigate them together. The journey had just begun, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the days turned into weeks, James found himself increasingly immersed in the lives of the Zyran princesses. Their time in the Forbidden Forest had sparked a subtle shift in their dynamic. They were no longer just aloof royalty and an awkward human mechanic. Instead, they were forging a bond, one tempered by shared experiences and emerging trust. One morning, as James adjusted to the rhythms of palace life, he received an unexpected summons from Zalara. She had requested his presence in the Grand Library, a vast chamber filled with towering shelves of ancient tomes and intricate holographic displays. The library was a breathtaking amalgamation of technology and artistry, with swirling patterns of light illuminating the intricate carvings on the walls. James entered cautiously, greeted by the soft rustle of pages being turned. Zalara sat at a grand table, poring over an ancient text, her brow furrowed in concentration. "James," she said, looking up as he approached. "I need your help with something." "Of course," he replied, intrigued. "What do you need?" Zalara gestured to the book before her, its pages filled with ornate illustrations and flowing Zyran script. "This book is a historical account of the Zyran royal family. I found a passage that speaks of a hidden artifact, the crown of the ancients. It's said to possess immense power and was lost many centuries ago. If it still exists, it could be vital to our kingdom's future." James leaned closer, the weight of her words settling on him. "And you want to find it?" She nodded, her violet eyes gleaming with determination. "The royal family has always believed that the crown could unite the factions of our empire, which have been fractured for too long. But I need someone who can think outside the confines of tradition. You have a unique perspective." "All right," James agreed, feeling a rush of excitement. "Where do we start?" Zalara tapped her fingers on the table, contemplating. "The text mentions that the crown is hidden within the Valley of Echoes, a place steeped in myth and guarded by ancient spirits. Only those pure of heart can access its secrets." "That sounds like an adventure," James said, a grin spreading across his face. "But how do we get there? And are the princesses allowed to accompany us?" Zalara hesitated. "It's risky. The valley is said to be treacherous, and the spirits are unpredictable. But I can't do this without you, and I believe the other princesses deserve to know. If we're going to find the crown, we'll need their skills and insights." "Let's gather them," James suggested. As they made their way through the winding corridors of the palace, Zalara's demeanor shifted from focused to contemplative. "I hope they take this seriously," she muttered. "Lara is always looking for fun, and Alara can be, well, stubborn." James chuckled softly. "We'll make it an adventure they won't forget. Maybe it'll even teach them something about responsibility." When they reached the princess's chamber, Lara was sprawled across a pile of cushions, her hair a wild halo around her. Alara was sitting at a small desk, meticulously arranging holographic projections of star maps, her sharp features illuminated by the blue glow. "What's going on?" Lara asked, propping herself up on one elbow, her interest piqued. "We've discovered something important," Zalara began, her tone grave. "A hidden artifact that could change the course of our kingdom, the crown of the ancients. We need to retrieve it from the Valley of Echoes, and I believe we should all go." Lara's eyes widened with excitement. "Adventure? Count me in." Alara looked skeptical, but intrigued. "And what makes you think we'll succeed?" "Ancient artifacts are often protected for a reason." James stepped forward, eager to quell any doubts. "This isn't just about the crown. It's about uniting our kingdom. We've faced challenges before, and we can do it again. Together." "Fine," Alara relented, her silver hair shimmering in the light. "But we need a plan. I don't want to wade into unknown dangers without understanding what we're up against. The group gathered around a holographic display, and James initiated a map of Zero Prime, zooming in on the location of the Valley of Echoes. From what I know, it's a few days' journey by hovercraft. We should gather supplies, and I suggest we take 2 crafts for safety. Zalara nodded. Agreed. We'll need food, water, and anything that might aid us in navigating the valley. Lara bounced on her cushions, her energy infectious. I can pack some of my favorite snacks. You can't have an adventure without good food. As the planning unfolded, James felt a sense of camaraderie building among them. They worked together to prepare their gear, and as they shared stories of past exploits, laughter filled the room. It was a stark contrast to the tension that had once defined their interactions. The next morning, they boarded the hovercrafts, their spirits high as they set off toward the Valley of Echoes. The landscape of Zero Prime whizzed by, vast deserts, shimmering lakes, and rocky outcroppings that jutted from the ground like ancient sentinels. As they traveled, James took the opportunity to bond with the princesses. He learned more about their lives, their aspirations, and their struggles. Zalara revealed her dreams of leading the kingdom toward peace, while Alara shared her desire to explore the stars and understand the universe beyond their world. Even Lara, who often seemed carefree, opened up about her yearning for adventure and her frustration at being seen as just a young princess. Their conversations flowed easily, weaving an intricate tapestry of understanding and trust. By the time they reached the outskirts of the Valley of Echoes, a sense of unity had firmly taken root among them. As they approached the valley, the air thickened with an eerie energy, and the landscape shifted dramatically. The valley was flanked by towering cliffs, their surfaces etched with strange markings that seemed to hum with ancient power. The entrance was shrouded in mist, making it impossible to see what lay beyond. "Stay close," Zalara instructed, her tone serious. "The stories about this place are unsettling. We need to be prepared for anything." James nodded, gripping the gear he'd assembled. "We'll watch each other's backs." As they ventured deeper into the valley, the sounds of the outside world faded, replaced by an otherworldly silence. Shadows danced along the cliffs, and whispers echoed faintly in the air. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, the kind that hinted at both danger and discovery. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught James's eye. A shadow darted between the rocks, too fast to be discerned clearly. "Did you see that?" he asked, glancing back at the princesses. "Just keep moving," Alara replied, her voice steady but laced with tension. The group pressed onward, the mist swirling around them like a living entity. As they reached a clearing, a sudden gust of wind swept through, parting the fog to reveal an altar at the center, covered in intricate carvings. "The altar of the ancients," Zalara whispered, all washing over her. James approached cautiously, the air tingling with energy. "This is it. The crown should be here." But as he reached the altar, a low rumble echoed through the valley, shaking the ground beneath them. The mist thickened, swirling faster until it coalesced into a figure, a majestic, ethereal being, glowing with an iridescent light. "You have come to seek the crown of the ancients, but only those worthy may claim it," the being intoned, its voice resonating through the very fabric of the valley. James felt a surge of fear and determination. "We seek the crown to unite our kingdom," he declared, standing tall before the apparition. "We're here to learn, to grow, and to protect our people. Your intentions are noble, but prove your worth. Only through trials can the crown be revealed." The mist thickened, and the ground beneath them trembled again. The valley transformed, presenting them with 3 distinct paths, each shrouded in mystery. "Which path do we take?" Lara asked, her excitement tinged with apprehension. "Let's decide together," James replied, scanning each path. "One of us should choose, and we'll all follow. United, we can face whatever trials await." As the princesses deliberated, the weight of their choices hung heavily in the air. James felt a newfound responsibility settling on his shoulders. The fate of their quest, and perhaps their kingdom, rested in their hands. With a shared determination, they stepped forward, ready to embrace the challenges ahead and discover the truths hidden within the Valley of Echoes. The mist swirled around the four paths, each one emanating a different energy that pulsed through the air. Zalara, Elira, Lara, and James stood at the intersection, the gravity of their situation weighing heavily upon them. The ethereal guardian's voice still echoed in their minds, reminding them that their worth would be tested. "We need to choose wisely," Zalara said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Each path could represent a different trial, and we don't know what lies ahead." Elira crossed her arms, her silver hair cascading down like a waterfall. "I suggest we split up. Each of us should face a trial individually. That way, we can cover more ground and learn about the crown's significance from different perspectives." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Lara interjected, her green eyes wide with concern. "What if one of us gets into trouble? We should stick together." James nodded in agreement. "I understand Elira's point, but we have no idea what kind of dangers await us. We're stronger as a team." The princesses considered James's words, their expressions a mix of uncertainty and resolve. Finally, Zalara spoke up. "We'll compromise. We'll take the paths one at a time, with two of us going together for each trial. That way, we can support one another and regroup quickly if needed." "Fine," Elira conceded, a flicker of respect passing through her eyes. "Let's start with the path on the left. It seems to lead deeper into the valley." With a plan in place, they approached the left path, which was illuminated by a faint, warm glow. As they stepped onto the trail, the air shifted, and the whispers of the valley grew louder, swirling around them like an invisible current. The path narrowed, flanked by ancient trees that twisted skyward, their gnarled branches stretching like skeletal hands. The atmosphere was thick with an unsettling energy, sending shivers down James's spine. As they ventured deeper, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Suddenly, the path erupted in a cacophony of sounds, and the earth cracked open to reveal a chasm. From its depths emerged three colossal stone figures, their faces etched with fierce expressions, towering over the group like ancient sentinels. "Who dares tread upon this sacred ground?" boomed the central figure, its voice echoing through the valley. "We are seekers of the crown of the ancients," Zalara replied, stepping forward, her posture regal despite the looming danger. "We wish to prove our worth. To claim the crown, you must answer our riddles," the left figure growled. "Answer correctly, and you may pass. Fail, and you shall be trapped here for eternity." James felt a rush of anxiety wash over him. Riddles were never his strong suit, but he couldn't back down now. "What are the riddles?" he asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Listen closely," the central figure said. "First riddle. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?" James furrowed his brow, thinking hard. "A whispering wind." The answer danced on the tip of his tongue. "An echo," he said, his voice rising with confidence. The stone figures paused, and then the leftmost one nodded slowly. "Correct. You have earned your first passage. But there are two more riddles." "Bring it on," Lara exclaimed, her excitement bubbling over. The second figure stepped forward. "Second riddle. I can be cracked, made, told, and played. What am I?" James racked his brain, recalling childhood games and the laughter of friends. "A joke," he shouted, feeling the adrenaline surge. "Correct again. You are cleverer than you appear, human," the left figure replied, a hint of respect in its tone. The tension in James's shoulders began to ease, but the final riddle loomed like a storm cloud. The central figure's voice boomed once more. "Last riddle. The more of this there is, the less you see." "What is it?" James felt a rush of panic as he struggled to find the answer. His mind raced through the possibilities, and then it hit him. "Darkness," he shouted, the realization igniting a spark of hope within him. The stone figures fell silent, and then, one by one, they bowed their heads in acknowledgement. "You have answered correctly, and thus you may pass. But remember, The trials are not just about wit. They are about understanding yourselves and each other. As the figures retreated into the ground, a path opened before them, leading deeper into the heart of the valley. "We did it!" Lara cheered, jumping up and down. "That was amazing. I knew you could do it, James." Zalara placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes shining with approval. "You showed great insight and courage. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, but I couldn't have done it without all of you," James replied, feeling a warmth spread through him at their praise. "Let's keep going. There's more to uncover." The group ventured further along the path, and as they walked, James felt a newfound sense of unity with the princesses. They were becoming more than just a mechanic and a group of alien royalty. They were allies, sharing a common purpose. After a short while, they emerged into a large clearing, filled with strange luminescent plants that cast an ethereal glow on the surroundings. In the center stood an ancient stone pedestal, and upon it rested a beautifully crafted artifact, a delicate mirror that shimmered like liquid silver. "What is that?" Elira asked, stepping closer to examine it. "It looks ancient." "That is the mirror of reflections," a voice echoed through the clearing, this time softer and almost melodic. A figure emerged from the shadows, a graceful being with flowing hair that resembled strands of starlight. "You have proven your worth in the first trial, but this mirror is a test of your character." The being's luminous eyes locked onto each of them. "To pass, you must look into the mirror and confront your innermost truths." James exchanged glances with the princesses, a mix of intrigue and trepidation swirling in the air. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The mirror will show you visions of your past, your fears, and your desires. It will challenge you to accept who you are and who you wish to become. Only then will you gain the knowledge necessary to seek the crown of the ancients." Lara stepped forward hesitantly, her playful demeanor replaced by uncertainty. "What if we don't like what we see?" "Then you must confront it," the being replied, its voice soothing. "Denial will only hinder your journey. Embrace what you discover, and you shall emerge stronger." James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I'll go first," he volunteered, stepping toward the pedestal. As he peered into the mirror, a wave of energy washed over him. The surface rippled like water, and then images began to materialize. He saw himself as a child, surrounded by the whir of machinery in his father's workshop, learning the art of fixing things. Laughter filled the air as he and his father shared moments of joy and frustration, bonding over their shared passion for machines. But the scene shifted. Suddenly, he was alone, the workshop empty and silent after his father's passing. Pain surged through him. He remembered the loneliness that had settled in after that loss, the void that had become his constant companion. Then the images transformed again, this time showing him on the space station, surrounded by the hum of engines, but without a single friend or connection. He felt that familiar ache, the isolation that had defined his life. A deep voice echoed from the mirror. "What do you desire most?" James swallowed hard, the question striking a chord deep within him. "I want to belong," he whispered, the admission breaking through the walls he had built around himself. "I want to be part of something greater than myself." As the words left his lips, the mirror glowed brighter, illuminating his face. He felt warmth spread through his chest, and for the first time, he realized he was not just a mechanic. He was someone capable of making a difference, of forging connections that mattered. The images faded, and he stepped back, breathless. The princesses regarded him with a mixture of awe and empathy. "You're not alone anymore," Zalara said softly, her gaze steady. "We're in this together." Feeling a rush of gratitude, James nodded. "I'm ready for the next one." One by one, the princesses approached the mirror, each facing their own fears and desires. Zalara's visions revealed her struggles with leadership and the weight of her responsibilities. Elira confronted her fears of inadequacy, while Lara faced her longing for acceptance and adventure beyond the palace walls. When they were all done, the being reappeared, its presence enveloping them like a warm embrace. "You have faced your truths and emerged stronger. This is the key to understanding one another. Together, you will find the crown and unlock its power. James felt a renewed sense of purpose and camaraderie among the group. They were no longer just four individuals. They were allies bound by shared experiences, ready to face whatever came next. Now, let's find the crown of the ancients, James said, determination igniting in his chest. With that, they turned away from the mirror, the path ahead leading deeper into the Valley of Echoes, where the next trial awaited. United and resolute, they pressed on, ready to uncover the secrets that would shape their destinies and their kingdom.